This is Coda Radio, episode 229 on spooky October 31st, 2016. Hi everyone, and welcome to Coda Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show, taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. This episode is brought to you by our two fine sponsors, DigitalOcean and Linux Economy. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. Omi, thanks for asking. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week, scrubbing that touch bar, is Mr. Michael Dominic. Hello, Mike!
Hello, Chris, and goodbye, Uma. Ooh.
Oh, man, Mike. This weekend, I have been glued to the news like never before. I even as somebody who follows the news like crazy, I'm like every 15 minutes, I'm refreshing my feeds. It's been...
Yeah, you know who's also doing that?
You?
Uma.
Oh.
She's like, oh, God.
Oh, and man, there's so many things to talk about this week. It's like if we could write a story arc for this show, the last 3 weeks would have been brilliant story writing. I love how it's all coming together this week. So we have a lot to start with. But I did kind of make a promise before we get into all of like the tools and business end of stuff. I made a promise, and I hope you're not going to make me a liar. I made a promise to the tweeters that we would start the show this week with a little positive PHP news. Am I a liar?
Is it because it's Halloween and we're trying to scare people?
Yeah, we're trick-or-treating them, and this is the trick.
Yes, no, in fact, I posted the positive PHP link. I did not write it, though, because I can't do that. But
no, Keith Adams wrote it over at Slack. This is a Slack engineer. And he says Slack uses PHP for most of its server-side application logic, which is an unusual choice these days. Why did we choose to build a new project in this language? And should you? Most programmers who have casually used PHP know two things. It's a bad language, which they should never use when given the choice, and that some of the most extraordinary successful projects in history use it. That is so true. Oh, that's great. This is not quite a contradiction, but it should make us curious. Did Facebook, Wikipedia, WordPress, Etsy, Baidu, Box, and most recently Slack all succeed in spite of using PHP? Would they have been better off expressing their applications through Ruby, Erlang, or Haskell? Perhaps not. PHP, the language, has many flaws, which undoubtedly have slowed these efforts down. But PHP environments has its virtues, with more and more things that compensate for those flaws. And the options for improving PHP at the language level's flaws are actually pretty impressive. So on balance, PHP provides better support for building, changing, and operating successful projects in competing environments. Would I start a new project in PHP today? With a reservation or two, but with zero apologies. Now that kind of contradicts everything we've really been talking about for a year plus.
So, actually, no, right?
Bring it, brother. Bring it, brother.
Other than the trolling, what we've been saying about PHP, and I think what a lot of the more fair criticism has been saying, perhaps with too much snark, is that PHP is an old technology that, because it is used for things it was never designed to be used for, allows you to do all kinds of bad things.
Yeah, okay.
You could make a very similar argument about Objective-C. The difference being Objective-C is great and you're all wrong, and all you babies with Swift are just...
Okay.
Okay.
All right, well, so that's settled. Case closed.
No, this is a great read. I mean, especially for, a large percentage of our audience has to be using PHP, right? If they follow the quote-unquote programmer demographics at all, they just have to. I mean, it's a very common language. And I will say that like some of the stuff in Cake PHP or Laravel isn't terrible. It's just, there's a high, how could we say this? Because PHP is so easy to get started with and has such a clean kind of build cycle, refresh the damn page. A lot of, let's say, newbies or new developers start out with it and do a lot of really, really horrible stuff.
You know what? One of the things I loved about PHP years and years ago when I first saw it, with very little practical experience, I sat down and I could read it and I could understand what it was doing. And so from a server guy, to be able to open up this PHP script and understand how it works and what it's calling on, it made working with PHP my preferred server side language. just because I could simply open it up and understand it and work with the developer at a level that was much more productive with them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the strength and also, fatal flaw in PHP, right? You can very quickly know enough to become dangerous with it.
Yeah. And honestly, Mike, like with so many tools, there are things you can do to it or add to it or modules you can put in there that aren't maintained anymore. I mean, it's everything that gets to a certain size and market penetration, I think suffers these issues.
Well, and there's also the fact that PHP, you can run PHP from 13 years ago with very little modification, right? And that will incentivize certain business types to want to do that forever.
That's very true, Mike. That's very true.
So there are reasons that like people do bad things that aren't that they're bad or stupid. It's that there's no budget for this project to be done the right way, right? I mean, there's all kinds of things we could get into. But I figured it's Halloween. I mentioned something scary, so there's nothing like PHP.
Sorry, I just got a little carried away there. So, okay, what I'm itching to talk about really, really, really badly is the
Surface Studio.
Yeah, that's their iMac, right? You know?
Hey, don't call it an iMac.
Oh, no. I was actually hoping we could talk about this a little bit last week, but this is better. We were hoping while we were doing the show, 228, that your new System 76 Lemur would arrive and we could talk about it a little bit. But that didn't actually work out. But since the last episode, you have received your new hardware. You've done the grand unboxing. I would love to pick your brain about where it's gone, how it's gone, what surprised you, what's disappointed you, how the monitor worked out, the unboxing, all of it. And then I would like to compare and contrast some of it with the broader set of developer tools out there. What do you think? Where do you want to start?
So let's start at the beginning. The box comes. I have never seen such cool packaging in my life.
Yeah. And what's really neat about that is one of their own staff internally designed that artwork.
Oh, the artwork. Yeah, it is super cool.
Yeah.
My first couple days with it, I primarily ran it in clamshell mode in place of the Raytail at work. Yeah.
Hooked up to the monitor or
hooked up to the Dell monitor. If you want to know which Dell monitor, I'm sure we'll put it in the show notes. It's it's basically the Dell Cinema display, right?
Mm-hmm. It's in 228 show notes. Did you and what interface did you plug it into, and did you have any resolution issues?
I had to change the resolution in the settings on Ubuntu the first time.
Sure.
But every subsequent time it's been fine, and then taking it home to my my 1080 monitor has been fine too.
And you're using just the HDMI built-in?
Just the HDMI, yeah.
Sweet, man. That's what I was worried about last week, that it wouldn't work.
Plugged in. I have a nice little beach background going on there.
Yeah, I'm really glad that worked.
Yeah, that just worked out of the box. That was pretty cool.
Oh, it looks nice.
It is quite pretty.
Yeah, and Unity, because it's just really simple, and the side panel takes on the color tones of your background. It complements a gorgeous wide display like that. It really well.
No, it really worked. I mean, it just plugged in fine. So far, so good, right? All right. So let's take our next shot. If you're fast enough to do it. Yes, there's video in this one today, people, or images at least.
Oh yes, yeah. I got you taking it out of the box and it booting up for the first time right here. Is there more?
Yes.
Okay.
So yes. This is where we get into the review a little bit, right? I got 3 questions, basically nonstop on Twitter about this. How's the keyboard? How's the trackpad? How's the battery life?
And those are the top 3 questions all the time.
Top 3 questions.
Yep.
Right. First one, keyboard. Keyboard's fine. It's coming from not the newest MacBook Pro, but the one from 3 years ago. It is a noticeable downgrade, but you're on par with most Windows laptop keyboards. And I would say you're slightly better than some. So you're okay, right? They do some interesting things to shove all the function keys in the keyboard. That's fine. I mean, I tend to use my machines in clamshell mode anyway. But it does have, my big thing is it has a little less key travel than the MacBook Pro. And then what obviously I use mechanical keyboard. So
than the old MacBook Pro, yeah.
Right. So the new one, it's probably better than the new one, but let's see. The trackpad, it's just not good. I mean, this is probably the weakest part of the whole machine right here. It feels weird. I don't find the responsiveness great.
Oh, really? Even just like the finger tracking?
Yeah, it just seemed a little jittery. Sometimes it seemed fast. Sometimes it seemed slow.
How much non-MacBook trackpad experience have you had?
I've had some Dells, right? But I'm a mouse guy. So even with this, I was only using the trackpad as an experiment for the review, right?
So you would say if you were going to buy a laptop and you for some reason were going to have the limitation of not hooking up a mouse, would this be a workflow issue for you?
I don't think it would hit that level. I mean, I think I would probably tweak some settings in Ubuntu to like slow it down, basically.
Oh, sure, yeah. Oh, okay,
But
yeah.
I don't, it doesn't feel good. And see, this is where comparing it to a 3-year-old MacBook Pro is kind of unfair to System 76 because no one can make a trackpad better than Apple right now. I will say that it's not, it's not ideal, right? But even with my MacBook, I still packed a mouse in my briefcase.
Yeah.
So it's not like, it's an additional inconvenience. I think trackpads suck across the board.
Yeah.
I just happen to think the Apple one sucks a little less.
I will just do a personal plug.
Note,
I love the Logitech MX Anywhere mouse. It's a great mouse. Just anyways.
Yeah, I just carry one of the low end Nagas because why not? Okay, so that's fine, right? I mean, that is, if I was CEO of System 76 for a day, which I know they like are resellers or whatever, so I don't know how they would do this, but I would definitely work on that trackpad. The next item is the battery life. They say, I'm not sure what they claim. I run my laptops with high brightness, and I tend to stream audio all the time from jupiterbroadcasting.com. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So I was getting about, and this is me doing work in Android Studio, right? Streaming audio, brightness up, some peripherals plugged in, like a Nexus 5X and a mouse, obviously. I was getting about 4 to 5 hours.
Okay.
Is not terrible.
Is that enough for you? I'm trying to figure out what I honestly, Mike, I think my acceptable battery life is 2 hours. If I can get good high performance in 2 hours, I'm usually pretty good.
Yeah, here's the thing. I'm not a PC gamer anymore. I used to play them, but I can't imagine sitting for 5 hours with no, AC power, right?
For me, what I need is I need to be able to encode video, or you probably need to be able to build software, and I need to be able to sprint.
Yeah, well, Cradle's slow to begin with.
Do you have a sense that this could, like, could you get high CPU load and brightness and Wi-Fi and all that for a couple of hours?
I think I could, but a couple is probably 2. Right.
Yeah, and it would be nice, obviously, if it could be 10 hours.
So that's actually a great point. The Lemur I'm reviewing is not the base model. It starts at $700, and the one I bought is $1,500. So I'm pretty upgraded. I'm running the i7. I've got 16 gigs of RAM, which according to Apple is all the RAM you'll ever need.
Yep, you're good.
I upgraded the SSD, so I've got a couple things in there where this is actually a more powerful machine than the Raytel I recently bought.
Sure.
So
God, that sounds like a great system, and it's got the latest generation Intel i7 too.
Latest Kaby Lake.
Nice.
So in terms of performance, if you buy the base model, your mileage will certainly vary. But I have to say, running an i7, getting 4 to 5, and let's even say it's closer to 4 because I'm not super scientific with it, is fine.
Honestly, and I'm not just saying this, System 76 doesn't sponsor this show. I would rather be able to buy a laptop with 16 gigs of RAM and maybe in a year or 6 months upgrade it to 32 than have 10 hours of battery life. Just for me, the way I work, I don't need 10 hours of web browsing. I need to be able to sprint, and I need a lot of RAM.
Well, see, that's the next point I was going to make, because most of the time I'm using the laptop, it's going to either be clamshell mode on my desk at work, or it's going to be clamshell mode at my home office.
Why are you wasting the extra screen? I don't understand.
I have issues with screens not being the same resolution. It's just
yeah, thing. Okay, fair enough. I got over that when I went vertical on one of my monitors, and I
know. A couple of people told me on Twitter, just turn the Dell vertical, and
yeah, I will. And you know what? It's really nice because I can put Slack and Telegram, and I can fit a VLC window on there. Like it's actually great.
I get it, right? I mean, sure. I'm just not going to.
Okay.
At least not now.
Fair enough. That's what works. That's fine.
Yeah, the general build of the machine I think is fine. It's like 3 pounds. It's pretty light.
How's the screen?
The screen is, that was my other point in the review. I am not a fan of matte screens, but this screen and the Dell monitor I recently got are kind of turning me around. It is a 1080 screen. It's not quote unquote Retina, right? But it looks really good. I mean, the fonts render beautifully, which is something I'm a bit of a bitch about because I look at fonts all day long, if you can imagine. So, I mean, there's a picture. And now it's a little washed out because I was working on the porch right there on the screen. But it looks super, super good. Other than this obvious sunlight and washing it out there.
Yeah, I've been debating if my next laptop will be matte screen or glossy. I like glossy for
Who's
editing.
still selling glossy? I mean,
oh, you can get glossy in some places, and it's nice for editing. But matte, when you're working, if you want to go outside, or sometimes if I have a laptop, I just like to move wherever the sunlight is in the building I'm working in, and sit there. So I kind of think maybe I'm on the fence, and I like matte. I think it probably is more realistic of how most people see things. But when I'm editing, I like the way blacks look under a glossy screen.
I do too. I mean, it just wasn't an option, right? So I think if you tried it and you worked with it for a couple of days, you would feel fine. You'd be all right.
So, what about light bleed on the sides or anything like that? Is that all pretty solid?
Seems solid. I mean, the one thing on the build quality that I'm not in love with, it does feel super plasticky, and for some stupid reason, there's a VGA port.
Welcome to corporate America, dude.
Yeah, but I mean, give me another USB port, right?
Yeah, I understand that there's a lot of people in corporate America that are doing presentations, and here's a beautiful thing: is all of these conference rooms are filled with projectors with VGA connectors. It's just the most outrageously prehistoric crime against humanity, and we're all dragging VGA along because of it. That and server rooms. Don't even get me started on servers either.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a reason, and my first thought was, okay, you're doing like a Google PowerPoint presentation. Yeah, someone in the chat room saying, does it feel cheap? Again, it's hard for me, right? Because I traditionally don't like non-Mac hardware. I mean, I've liked Surfaces in the past. It definitely, you can feel that it's plastic. And if you're really, if you're someone who's going to buy the new MacBook Pro because it's pretty, you're probably going to not like this.
Well, let's get real just for a second.
Break it down for me, son.
I mean, are we actually even having this conversation? You are talking about the difference between
People were asking in the chat, and people have asked on Twitter.
Okay, so let's go 13-inch MacBook Pro because you got a 14-inch screen, and you have an i7 in there. You can't even. Well, sorry. Well, we'll see if we can upgrade. So let's see. The MacBook Pro starts at $1,500 with an i5 processor and a 256 gigabyte SSD and 8 gigabytes of RAM. I'll start there. This is what is an atrocity. So it's going to be an extra $300 to go up to an i7. To get 16 gigs of RAM, it's another $200. By the way, that's my max. Are you 256 gig SSD or 512, Mike?
I don't remember. I thought I went 256.
All right, I'll do 256. I'll leave it at 256. And so with an i7 processor and 16 gigabytes of RAM, the 13-inch MacBook Pro, the one that doesn't even have the touch bar, is $2,000 before sales tax.
Yeah, well, they've raised the prices. I mean, in real-time follow-up, I'm actually 512. Whoops.
Oh, okay. So hold on.
So I did. Yeah, actually, if you follow this link I just put up, you could see all the upgrades I did.
It's $2,200. So I mean, at a certain point, you either have to decide how much is that metal build worth it to you. I think.
Oh no! To be clear,
you actually have better graphics than the new MacBook Pro does too.
Yeah, we're gonna get there, Chris. Don't worry. I have a lot of feces to throw at the new MacBook Pro. Just give me like 4 seconds. This, for me, is a piece of work equipment, right? This is not something I'm going to hipster or coffee shop and showing off to the girls wearing glasses with no lenses in them, right? This is a piece of work equipment that I have a job to do. I have a budget because I have a wife and a child and all that kind of fun stuff, right? There's no way in hell I was spending $3,000 on the equivalent MacBook. You have a better chance of going to Mars. If for whatever reason, I agree with you, right? It's stupid. I don't understand why people care so much about the physical appearance. First of all, this machine doesn't look bad. I think it looks good. It just, when you touch it, it feels like plastic because it's made from some sort of plastic, right?
Yeah, well, all these people that are holding their Android phones made from plastic all of a sudden have to take the moral high ground when it comes to build material.
Yeah, if that's obviously, my goal in life and in the show is not to convince people to buy hardware from anyone, right? I don't care what you do. If you're really willing to spend nearly double to change the build materials, you might want to think about your priorities, right? Now, I will say there are reasons that make sense to pick up the old MacBook compared to this machine, because I really don't think the new MacBook makes sense for virtually anybody. But if you want a powerful Linux laptop, and let's be frank, if you want to soup it up on a budget, right, it is not a bad choice. It's a good choice. Now, I will say that if you're going to buy this, I urge you to check out System 76's Gazelle 2, also the Dell XPS 13 Sputnik.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good comparable competitive machine there.
Right.
I have a slightly older model than
a little different.
I have a Sputnik from a year ago, and one of my favorite computers. And it feels about the same build quality. Keyboard's about the same. Everything's about the same. However, the one thing that's different is I've absolutely worked in places where there's a corporate agreement in place with Dell, and they've never even heard of System 76, which is unfortunate, but true.
I mean, the reality too is System 76 is a relatively small outfit, right?
You know, that's true. Although I think they've gotten to the point where they're getting enough of a recognition now that I don't think it'd be as much effort as it was a few years ago.
Well, I want to say that's not like a defense of them. This machine, like, as Dell has learned several times the hard way, if I'm not happy, I simply call up and return the machine. So I do like this laptop. I am working on it. It is fine. But I think if you're going to spend $1,500 on a machine, you should be informed. If you're going to spend $3,000, you should really value that Apple Watch up on the top of your keyboard.
I want to shift gears here for a moment. So that's super cool. And but I want to now transition to the tools aspect of this, because someone in the chat room, who was it? I lost. Oh, yeah, here we go. Kyle says System 76 laptops look cheap and clunky like a Lenovo from 4 to 5 years ago. And that really, I think, frames up a mindset about. So I want to transition from talking about the aesthetics and light bleed and things like that. And what I want to transition to is talking about tools, because after this MacBook Pro got announced, and I have spent so much time talking about all of the changes we've been making internally to switch to Linux that I don't often talk about the fact that we have a couple of two key systems that depend on macOS still. 3 key systems, actually, that depend on macOS still. And after watching this MacBook announcement, I have a very high level of anxiety about what the hell I'm going to do next, because part of my business process depends on this platform, and I am absolutely panicking about that. So I want to talk about this from a tool standpoint and why I don't care how clunky the damn thing looks. I just need something specifically. But first, I want to talk about another tool that I depend on every single day, and that's DigitalOcean. Right now, as I record this show, am depending on 3 droplets to make it possible. It's an embarrassingly useful tool. Anytime you could use a computer that doesn't have a monitor, DigitalOcean. Think about that. You need something to copy a live stream? Do you need something to process some data? Do you need something to index? Anytime you need a computer that doesn't have a monitor, DigitalOcean. Although they do have an HTML5 console built into their incredibly intuitive, easy-to-use interface, just use our promo code CODERDIGITAL, one word, lowercase, it'll give you a $10 credit. You can pay hourly, or you can pay monthly. Starts at $5 a month. Get you 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, a terabyte of transfer, a dedicated CPU. They're all SSDs. They use Linux for the servers, KVM for the virtualizer, 40 gigabit connections coming into the hypervisor. They have these beautifully designed interfaces, great documentation, and a super straightforward API. And when you use our promo code CODERDIGITAL, you can try it out for free with $10 credit. Oh! And did I mention they have data centers all over the world so you can look like a boss? They got them in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, London, Toronto, Germany, India. Go hang out with Alan Jude. Go hang out in Germany. And when DigitalOcean chooses a data center, they make sure to pick something that's at the center, the heart of connectivity, so that way you have the absolute best response time with the neighbors as well. They're part of the hood. DigitalOcean.com. Just use our promo code CODERDIGITAL. Go spin up a droplet. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. So I honestly, legitimately, not to like harp on a trope, but I seriously feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. When Apple announced the Mac Pro, I knew my era of using their hardware was over. And I've been sort of, for the last 3 years, sitting in stasis, not sure what to do. And I, now 3 years into this, am getting to the point where I kind of want to upgrade the production quality of JB shows. I don't have hardware powerful enough to do it, and I haven't transitioned to software that's better to produce it. Final Cut and Wirecast remain the best tools for us to mass produce these shows at a level that is not going to break the bank. And I can't justify buying these Macs anymore. 16 gigs of RAM is a max memory limit, is an absolute 100% non-starter. My base tool set takes around 12 gigs of RAM. That's before I've loaded in any footage. And if I want to go higher than 1080p, do you feel my pain here? Do you see where I'm going with this? I'm genuinely concerned about this.
So I don't necessarily directly feel your pain, but I'm very confused by these laptops, to be totally frank. I don't understand who they're for. And they're certainly not for, as you've mentioned, video editing, right? I mean, really, that is not a reasonable use for these.
Well, yeah, I mean, a 5K display is great. I'll tell you, before I get all high and mighty about this, I do want to acknowledge there's a couple of things about these MacBook Pros that are, I think they're worth giving Apple the nod for, and I hope the rest of the industry follows suit. USB-C is going to be a game changer for the industry. It's universal chargers, universal battery packs. In the field, this is going to make production so much better. Once everybody starts adopting USB-C for their chargers, this is great. That is fantastic. Also, the fact that they've used Thunderbolt 3, which has a connector compatible with USB-C, means they have a throughput on their external devices that no other laptop has ever shipped. Ever. Then they are combining that with SSDs that can do 3 gigabits per second of throughput. When you combine the fastest external transfer ever offered with the fastest internal data transfer ever offered, it's going to enable and I think they can send up to 15 watts per USB-C port. This is gonna revolutionize mobile production in some regards. But the limitation of 16 gigs of RAM essentially makes it unusable for what I do. I have a computer sitting across the room running Wirecast right now that's using 24 gigs of RAM.
So what do you make of that limitation? Because, the thing I've been feeling is that it's pretty obvious that to get the battery life they wanted and the thinness they have this sick, twisted desire for, they just had to stop at 16 gigs, right?
Yeah, and Phil Schiller was quoted as saying that I can't remember the exact words, but essentially the assembly required to support 32 gigabytes of RAM would require more power that would make it not practical for a notebook. Now, I don't know if it's actually because they wanted to strive for thinness. There is a blog that I have linked in the show notes that also says that the Federal Aviation Administration has capped the maximum allowable size of laptop batteries on flights to 100 watts. And that explains why Apple's MacBook Pro models contain precisely a 99.5 watt-hour battery. Making a laptop thicker would not allow them to increase the size of the battery wattage due to the FAA's regulations. Do you think that could be it?
Possibly, but
how come other
laptops can be right? And I don't know about the wattage on other laptop batteries, but how come other laptops can have 32 gigs of RAM? So at some point they're still saying, right? So if it's not battery size, it's battery life, then, right? It's battery longevity.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I tell you,
RAM uses power, right? More RAM equals, more.
I think we have all successfully bought into this obsession with the build quality to a point where we have allowed Apple to run away with this thing to an obsessive amount. You and I are communicating right now over a bonobo. that is this big laptop that is sometimes loud and has a big 17-inch screen, and there's nothing MacBook about it, but it also has an Ethernet port and like a dozen USB and like DisplayPort and HDMI. I mean, it is extremely useful as a tool to do my job, and I couldn't care less how thin it is. I wouldn't care if it was an inch thicker, to be honest with you. I really would not care. And as long as I'm not lugging it around every single day, everywhere I go, it is not a major issue for me. And I feel like if I am lugging it around every single day, then there is a different set of compromises I'm willing to make. But 16 gigs of RAM is not one of them. And this is frightening. When you look at what they're doing with all of their Macs, I think it is negligent that they didn't just even do an unannounced bump of the Mac Mini. Where's just update the specs? Just bump it. Just bump it. Just take a NUC and rip it apart and put it in a Mac Mini case and ship it. Just bump it.
All right.
They are absolutely 100% lost on the Mac platform. I think the issue is and I've never ever used this line, but I think the leadership is lost, and I think this would never stand if Steve Jobs was still alive. I know that's such a dick, stupid thing to say, but I swear to you, man, I swear this is look, listen, the issue is the sales guys have taken over.
Something else.
So they were very skillful.
Yeah, but they did show us.
Yeah.
So, and it's good that they showed us, because the technology crashed and burned at Xerox, and they used to call what's that?
No, I was just...
Why?
Yeah, why?
Oh, I actually thought a lot about that, and I learned more about that with John Scully later on, and I think I understand it now pretty well. What happens is, like with John Scully, John came from PepsiCo, and they at most would change their product, once every 10 years. I mean, to them, a new product was like a new size bottle, right? So if you were a product person, you couldn't change the course of that company very much. So who influenced the success of PepsiCo? The sales and marketing people. Therefore, they were the ones that got promoted, and therefore they were the ones that ran the company. Well, for PepsiCo, that might have been okay, but it turns out the same thing can happen in technology companies that get monopolies, like, IBM and Xerox. If you were a product person at IBM or Xerox, so you make a better copy or a better computer. So what? When you have a monopoly market share, the company's not any more successful. So the people that can make the company more successful are sales and marketing people. And they end up running the companies. And the product people get driven out of the decision-making forums. And the companies forget what it means to make great products.
Oh, man.
It's sort of the product.
So I think this is exactly what's happened. When Phil Schiller said that having a laptop with more than 16 gigs of RAM would be inefficient for a notebook, he is fundamentally disconnected what his pro users need out of a mobile workstation, because he's not technical enough. He doesn't have the insight. Nobody running the company has the deep, long-term technical involvement that Jobs had. He wasn't some sort of messiah. He had literally been involved with the industry since the very beginning and had an understanding of what drove these products, what made these professional machines. I don't think Tim Cook and Phil Schiller do. And I think the only thing they know to do is let Johnny Ive design it thinner, put a touch bar on it. They don't know how to actually create a product for technical people.
Wow. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here, right? Let's just look at the compromises this machine makes really fast. We've already talked about the RAM. Keep in mind that this is the MacBook Pro. What do you think about the touch bar?
Okay, I'll tell you, I would use the touch bar anytime I launched a new application and hadn't learned the keyboard shortcuts yet. And I would like to know the most useful, quick things I could use. After I had learned what those were, I would convert to keyboard shortcuts because I don't want to bring my hand all the way up to the display. I want to keep it down to the trackpad. And if I'm in Final Cut, like scrubbing the timeline, there's already touchpad gestures to do that. The thing is, that touchpad has a lot of gestures, and most of the things that little bar does, the touchpad already does. Scrolling through pictures, zooming in, all of it.
So let me because I've been trying, and you saw on Twitter, I spent the day they announced it trying to like figure out who it was for, right? Who is this device for? And I'm going to say this is not really a pro device. This is an aspirational, kind of wannabe pro device.
This is, I shoot 4K video on my iPhone, and I'm going to go edit it in Final Cut.
Exactly. This is for the, I want to say hobbyist, but I mean it in a kind of pejorative sort of way.
The hobbyist has been enabled by the availability of technology. So this touch bar,
the hobbyist who's not making his living off of it. That's the key.
Any professional that works in an application, be it an IDE or After Effects, if you're spending hours a day in that application, you have learned the keyboard shortcuts. You don't go up to the menu to hit the cut key. So this touch bar, you're not going to be using that because you've already learned the keyboard shortcuts.
Well, it's more than that, right? I mean, one of the jarring things for me is the MacBook Pro is, this is like a fact, right? I know people in the audience are going to like it, but it is the de facto developer machine.
Well,
if you're a unless you're on the Microsoft side of life.
Yeah, I guess actually, we get a lot
of them running around Redmond, by the way, just saying.
And every time I go to a conference, it's just in a wash of MacBooks. Anytime, even Linux conferences, but also, we get emails from Google developers. We get emails from people that Oracle, all walks of life, and often the choices are MacBook, Chromebook, or something else. But you have to have a reason. That's a big, not even just in Google. That's become an industry-wide thing, and my MacBook is big, and I think that's why IBM's working more and more with Apple. And if you look in the creative industries, outside of development, MacBook's even huger. It's their number one selling. It's the reason why the MacBook's the number one selling product for Apple in terms of the Mac category is simply because it has become the workhorse machine of a lot of industries.
I mean, it is the best product they make or made, other than the iPhone, right? I mean, we could argue about the iPhone, but let's just like dissect down to that developer audience. Like, why did the Mac, you remember this, right? Early 2000s, how the hell did the Mac become so popular? Well, there were two big factors. It is a Unix machine at the time when Linux was still kind of a pain in the dick to use, right? Mm-hmm. And, by the way, that little iPhone came out in 2008.
Yeah, Xcode, the apps,
right? Which, if you were smart enough to get on the Apple bandwagon at the time, you just like printed money.
Man, I can't tell you how many times I've heard the line. Honestly, Chris, I want to watch Netflix, I want to be able to use Photoshop, and I want to bash Terminal.
And that, right,
which is all doable, totally 100% on Linux now. But go back in time a few years, and that was a different story.
The problem I have with this machine is, for myself, for, other developers that bitch about it on Google Plus and things like that, I'll even point out, if you listen to some Apple podcasts, there's a little bit of grumbling about why is this so much more expensive for very little more power. It really is not. If you're a developer and you just want like more RAM and more CPU throughput and faster SSDs, it's not that awesome of an upgrade.
Yeah, we were,
Well, it is. It is an awesome upgrade, but it's been 3 years, right?
Well, exactly. That's why it is. The Beard and I were sitting here watching the live event in the studio before I started TechSnap, and when they put up benchmarks comparing the new MacBook against the old MacBook, my first thought was, well, of course, Apple always does that. But my second thought was, that's so much bullshit.
It's sandbagging. And then the butterfly keyboard. I mean, they say it's an improved. And if you don't know, the butterfly keyboard is the keyboard on the kind of gold and the crazy looking little MacBook that I know one crazy developer who actually likes.
Who? What? Really?
He's sitting next to me. He's
okay. Because by the way, I have not heard that from I have not heard
I've
that.
used it. It's terrible. I hate it. But it's got like no key travel. He's throwing me the finger.
Is he? He must have young fingers that haven't spent decades pounding.
His 57-year-old fingers are so sprightly and agile.
Are you serious with me right now?
He's not happy. I sense an age discrimination suit coming. Anyway,
it's all worth the content.
It's all for the content, baby. You'll get a cut of the ad revenue. Fine. Why would you put that keyboard on a Pro machine? Like, even if they say it's revised and they made a point in the presentation of saying that, no one wants that.
Do you want my skeptical?
Please. I could not think of a sincere reason.
Okay, I mean, I honestly believe the people at the top that are driving this product don't have a technical grasp on what matters, and so they are deferring to the Steve Jobs second coming, which is Johnny Ive, and Johnny Ive wants to make it thinner.
That's so stupid. And yes, to the chat room, I do mostly use laptops and clamshell, but I occasionally open them up and we're like,
I actually don't think it's stupid. I actually think there is. I think the
pro machine.
Yes.
No,
okay. Yes. But I will say this. There is a value to having something thinner. As somebody who switched from a big ass huge phone, the Nexus 6P, to an iPhone that is a with the 4.6 whatever the smaller one is, that's not the SE. That it makes a huge I don't even know want to have it in my pocket. Having something thinner and smaller, there is value. You'll take it more places. You'll use it in more situations. And when you have a technological device of this capability with you in more positions and situations and environments, blah, 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 it is a net gain. However, make it a different category. Make it a different product line.
Thank you. That is what the MacBook No Pro is for, right?
Exactly.
Right. And it's not saying you can't do dev on the MacBook and you can't not do dev on the MacBook Pro. I'm just saying that, for many developers that I know, these MacBook Pros are their only machine, right? They are predominantly used either as a second monitor or in clamshell mode as though they were workstations. Why would you not err on the side of power? And also, you're raised basically every line $400. I mean, this is a really expensive purchase. And also the touch bar, I just, all these things, and I'm not even saying the touch bar is bad. I'm just saying it doesn't feel like a pro product. It doesn't feel like something.
You know what it is, Mike? Is it's a little obvious. It's a little, and what we're used to with Apple is coming up with the unobvious. How about coming up with something that we weren't expecting, or how about coming up with something how about that touchpad, making that a touchscreen, making that a more actual.
That might have been super interesting because you know what, their gestures on the touchpads are pretty cool. I have a better idea though. How about a silver tower with cheese grater vents, removable video cards, removable RAM,
like expansion slots.
Yeah, and how about a couple hard drives and PCI ports?
Nobody wants that.
Actually, you know what?
Can I tell you I think I have a solution, and I've thought a lot about it, and I think it's a little crazy, but can I share it with you?
Oh, please. All
right. Well, first I'm going to tell you about Linux Academy. LinuxAcademy.com. I know. That's how I do. LinuxAcademy.com/coders. Go right there to support the show and sign up for a 7-day free trial of Linux Academy. It's a platform to learn about the world's most important open source operating system and all of the tools that make you money. Anything you want on your resume, anything you want to learn as a skill that actually makes you more valuable, it is an incredible resource that I would have killed for when I was back in IT. LinuxAcademy.com/coders. Go there and check it out. They have labs and exercises that give you hands-on scenario-based learning, instructor mentoring when you need an actual human being to answer a question. They have lab servers that spin up on demand when you need them and then you SSH into them. They have self-paced, in-depth video courses. You can download this stuff and take it with you and listen offline or read it. Learning Paths, which are a series of courses and content planned by instructors for specific career tracks. Also, they have tracks for certifications as well and public profiles so you can show your employer the hard work you've been doing. Check them out at linuxacademy.com/coders. And a big thank you to Linux Academy for sponsoring the Coder Radio program and for creating a platform that just focuses on this stuff for the people that really want to get a valuable resource and a valuable training session. linuxacademy.com/coders now with a 7-day free trial. Mr. Dominic, I thought about it for a little bit, and I think, honestly, if I get to the position where in the next 2 years I haven't found a better software package, and we are evaluating, different ones. I'm spending a lot of time looking into ones that run just on Linux. But if we get to a point where I haven't gotten to the point where nicely done. I don't like any of them. If we get to that point,
Sam Adams.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to Hackintosh it again. I'm going to go. Yeah, I'm gonna. I have to.
No,
I might have to. I might have to. I mean, I'm hoping in a couple of years I'll just go get a wild dog, or I'll just be able to build a system and I'll be able to run the Linux stuff. It's definitely getting there on the Wirecast side, but on the editing side.
Why don't we get Ryan on the line and tell him that System 76 has to make a replacement for you?
Let me tell you something. It's not the hardware. It is absolutely not the hardware.
You need, what is it, Final Cut, right?
Yeah,
No.
I mean, it's not just Final Cut. It's also like After Effects and all these other things. So here's where I'm at right now. I'm at a point where I feel like I could double down and I feel like I'm at a place where I could explode creatively and I have a lot more content in me. And I all of it will die on the vine if I get frustrated with the tools and I'm not satisfied with the capability of the tools. And that is where I'm at on the Linux side. And so if I have some ideas that I think will be some of the biggest game changers for the network ever.
Is it the interactive VR porn?
I asked you not to. I said don't say anything. No, it's not that. But I'm not kidding you. I am the type of person where if the tools are, if I'm constantly fighting the tools, I get discouraged and it's no longer fun and I don't want to do it. But what I have an idea for, I think could be huge, and I'm worried that the tools on Linux are not capable of delivering what I need to do. And
So it's a software availability issue.
Yes, and but I also at the same time I can't get. There's not the Mac, and the Mac won't do it, and I cannot use Windows. It is just anybody uses Windows, good for you. I'm happy it works for you. I spent too many years in IT, and I can't use Windows for workflow stuff. I can have a Windows box sitting in the corner running an application. That's fine, but I simply.
Do you notice how we've never considered a Windows laptop?
Yeah, I can't do it. No, it's not me, and I totally respect people that make it work like Alan Jude, man. He's got a Windows 7 workstation that works great for him. For me personally, it's a workflow problem. It is a workflow problem, and I can't use it for anything productive. I can have it do task-specific things, so I can't use Windows, so I can't use something like Adobe Premiere, and I can't use the Mac because the Macs are an actual joke in terms of hardware.
All right. What about like the 5K iMac, right? Because it seems like to me you don't really want a laptop.
That's the thing. I specifically want a laptop because I want to be able to edit content while I'm on the road.
Oh, yeah, you're beat. You're beat. What I mean?
System 76 makes machines that would go beyond what I need hardware-wise, but there's no software. And I tell you what, it's not like I've just kind of casually looked into this. I have spent literally more than a decade looking into this and trying and having projects burn on me on a weekly basis trying to make this work.
So, you're pretty plugged in with the Linux community. How come no one, this is an obvious market need and no one's thought to fill it?
It's like, it's the same problem with making a really great IDE. You need a certain level of industry buy-in. Mm-hmm. You have to be a company that can negotiate business-to-business contracts.
That's a tough sell. It's really tough, and I don't know what to say to you. I almost feel like video editors and mobile app developers are kind of in the same space with Apple, where there's a number of them that are kind of there under duress, right? Because, the easiest way to compile an iPhone app is with a Mac. And I say easiest because you can totally do a Mac mini server, although you still need a Mac, but you can do it. But that's a lot of work. I've been setting one up. It's kind of a huge pain in the ass, and it's so much easier to whip out my old MacBook and just make a build. Is there no cloud servery type of
No,
and
okay. Of course, because the other problem is I'm talking 1080p footage, I'm talking 4K footage.
Yeah, that's tough. This is a lot of snark in the chat room.
I know, and here's the problem. It's if you've never worked with these tools, you are so unaware of even what the issues are. You're like, well, just tell them what the problem is. The problem is they don't have a team of 25 people that have spent the last 15 years developing an application and establishing business relationships. That's the problem. How do I give that in a bug report? I can't give that in a bug report. It needs a company behind it.
Okay, well, steps to reproduce. Go to Martini Bar, talk to executives in black t-shirts.
It is. I am honestly not sure what the hell to do because I can't find better tools that work under Linux. I try. I can create some segments using Linux tools. I'm not naming specific editors because I don't want to shame any of them because they're all doing a really good job. For a couple of people working on a project or one person working on a project, they're doing amazing work, and I totally respect all the work they're doing, and they're 5 to 10 years out.
Okay, well, let's just chill out. Let's just back it up for a second.
Chat was getting me all fired up, Mike.
Right, they're getting all on their heels. Why not wait a year? This MacBook Pro will either be updated, cheaper, or both. Right, updated in terms of more RAM. And although I don't know how they're going to get a GPU in there. See that you're probably screwed. But
Yeah, and the thing is, like, they have some AMD piece of crap. I'd want the GTX 1080 series or 1060 series. I mean, give me a break. It's way more powerful. I don't care if I have to be plugged in. And I just don't. I look at the Mac Pro. That is an absolute dumpster fire.
That is an amazing waste of money. I mean, that's crap, right? No one should buy that for any reason, because it's like, what is it, 3 years old already? Is that the magic number?
This, as somebody who, so my mom is a graphic artist, and she has been a graphic artist since that was a term in the 80s when it was just developed. So there have been Macs in my house since the Apple II. And I have watched this company from that period, and I have never in my life witnessed them fail to deliver tools for creative professionals at the level they are failing to deliver right now. It is an atrocity. And the problem is that there's many vendors making much better machines, but there's nobody that's making Final Cut Pro 10. There's nobody that's making Photoshop that runs with the same machine that runs Final Cut Pro 10. All of this, and Premiere is fine, except for I don't want to run Windows. So if you throw Windows out, if you throw all of the Windows systems out, and then that limits yourself to the Mac right there, because honestly, the only way Linux is going to have this problem solved is if Adobe one day ships a absolutely fully baked version of Premiere for Linux. But in reality, if they actually ever shipped Premiere for Linux, it would be some sort of beginner version that would have half the features, that would use some sort of entirely new language and toolkit that they are experimenting with, that'll be the future of the Adobe platform that is 5 years out. So I am screwed either way on the Linux platform. I won't use Windows, and the Mac is the only thing that will work in terms of actually producing daily or weekly content, and I'm screwed.
Yeah, you're in a lot of trouble.
Hackintosh. So I really honestly think what I'm going to do is do it.
It's not gonna work. Like,
I'm going to. Here's what I want to do: is we have two Macs that I need to keep using on a daily basis. I'm not gonna replace them. I'm gonna let them run as long as they can. And I'm just going to have to stick at 720p video resolution. I'm going to have to stick at a certain lower level of production quality until I can replace these two Macs. And I'm just hoping that I can replace them with custom-built Linux boxes or something that is powerful and reliable. But until then, I just have to sit here and tread water, and my quality of my content suffers.
See, I mean, the problem with the Hackintosh route is every minor update is going to be a crucible for you, right? Why?
I could do an iMac for the editing for Rekai,
right,
but for myself, there's a project I want to take on, and I want something
you need to be mobile.
Yeah,
it's tough. I mean, and that would be, we've been pretty anti-Apple, and my problem isn't that this computer is necessarily not for me. It's that it's really not a pro computer by any metric other than being, like,
if it started at $1,200, that would be a great computer.
No, it really wouldn't, right? Because you're not buying. I'm sorry, you're not. Like,
not for me, but for somebody
as a tool, right? But this computer is supposed to be for you. Actually, this computer is more for you than for me, right? Really.
I thought so, but
the only thing pro about it is the price tag. And the throughput. I mean, seriously, Thunderbolt 3 and that storage is pro level, which is kind of wasteful.
And the 5K screen.
Sure, but where's you need more RAM, and the love of God, you need a GPU.
And by the way, to go to 2 terabytes of storage, it's a $1,200 upgrade.
I mean, I think about their traditional pro market. I think about video editing. I think about 3D rendering. I think about graphics rendering. And how the hell are you doing that without a GPU? I could see some of the video rendering working fine. But are you really going to tell me that, like, DreamWorks and Pixar can get away with this machine?
They have an AMD GPU in the Pro, in the 15-inch.
It's not even that good.
No, yeah. That's where I really thought when they compared it to the old MacBook, I thought that is such a bullshit comparison.
It's just a snake move, right? Because it's been
compare it to any other vendor's laptop GPU that is a dedicated, like, GTX series graphics card, and literally, Mike, the GTX 1060 series is 4 times faster than the GPU they're shipping in the MacBook Pro right now.
Wow. Walk down this road with me for a minute. If this was the Microsoft Surface Pro, they would have been ripped alive on the tech press. And I'm going to defend the crazy ass Surface Studio. I think it's a dumb machine, but it's actually also kind of cool, right? That little knobby thing and the, because you know what the Surface Studio can do? Power VR. You know what the MacBook Pro can't do? Power VR, right? I mean, what is going on here where Microsoft actually has the more, perhaps not better, but more interesting product, right? The more, isn't like the definition of Microsoft boring? Aren't they the guys who want to sit in Excel
productivity,
all day
cloud, and mobile?
Right. I mean, what happened? And Apple's like, what if we paint it black, raise the price $400, tape an iWatch in there, and then to hell with the RAM and the GPUs. And let's slap the Pro moniker on it. Oh, by the way, what about the Mac Minis that like every non-big shop who does development and graphics design uses for their non-designer employees?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying. I know.
Like, I have a stack of Mac Minis around here, and I can't get an upgrade if my life depended on it. Mm-hmm. It's the only really good, impressive machine that I feel like they have that's, if you're looking to buy a Mac, that I'd recommend you actually buy is the 5K iMac. But even then, you better have like $2,000 ready to go.
I think the 5K iMac is probably their most reasonable Macintosh.
I think price wise, and you have to remember you cannot upgrade it, but price wise, power wise, if you need a Macintosh, you want the 5K iMac.
There is also another problem with the Macs that we don't really discuss much, and that is that unlike other vendors, PC vendors, pre-built systems, they begin throttling at a much earlier power and temperature threshold because of the thin design of the iMac and some of the other machines. But mainly, I'm talking about the iMac. The iMac, I like the iMac in terms of a potential video editing computer. A 5K screen is
that's
perfect.
What I was suggesting. Yeah.
And really, honestly, the great SSD speed and all of that, it's really a nice machine. The problem is when you start really pegging the GPU or the CPU, it actually clocks the CPU down a little bit to meet the thermal requirements of the chips, because the CPU is getting too hot for the cooling system that they've included in the iMac.
Well, keep in mind, traditionally iMac chips are mobile chips shoved in a screen. They're not usually desktop grade hardware, right?
Right.
So there's that too.
I also am a believer that, and this is 100% personal perception thing, but I am an absolute believer that I can feel the performance difference between a desktop system and a laptop system. And I state that simply because of budget reasons and not wanting to spend a lot of money. I ended up on laptops for years. I was just using laptops for everything. For my main presentation here on the stream, for my main work machine, for my editing, laptops everywhere. Because I had a couple laptops, I didn't want to spend any more money, I was just making it work. Then Bitcoin went up in April or January, I can't remember when it was, and everybody was coming out for Linux Fest, and I said, let's build some PCs. We need an OBS rig running Linux. Let's get off of Wirecast. I need a new machine sitting here to do main presentations. Let's build a PC for that. And to make things nice and redundant, let's build a third PC. I'll put it up at my main desk. It'll be my new workstation. I'll go from like a GTX 600 series to a GTX 960 series, and I'll go from like a 7-year-old PC to a brand new. It was great, but I was coming from really new laptops. I'm talking current generation Skylake laptops. I didn't expect to really perceive a big performance difference when switching over to desktops. And they're not crazy desktops. They're nice desktops, but they're not crazy desktops. And I tell you what, Mike, fundamentally, every single thing I do on my desktop is absolutely faster than it is on my laptop, compute-wise, but also just the way it feels. And so when you build a desktop around laptop parts, there is absolutely a compromise. I don't care how fast the SSD is. There is a difference. And so that's why the Mac Pro is so important for absolute professionals that want all the performance they can get. They want the expandability, and they want a 10-year system. The iMac is a 3-year computer in production. And that's fine, except for it's so damn expensive. So that's what Rekai edits on, is an iMac. That's what controls our software-based mixer, is an iMac. The one is like a 2009 and one's like a 2012 or 2000. They're getting so old that they're holding us back. And the problem is the iMac was a good machine for 3 years, but it's not a 7 to 10-year machine like the Mac Pro can be. So it's still not good enough. It's a great computer. It's great for consumers. If you want to get a computer at your home that lasts a really long time and you don't want Windows and you don't want Linux, it's a great system. But it's not a professional system. It's not a good...
I mean, I'm going to say your 10-year cycle seems crazy to me. I mean, although at this rate, I'm like a 6-month kind of guy.
You know where
really,
I get that from, honestly, Mike, is I have had clients that are working on. It is years after Apple discontinued building power PC systems, and I go in there and they're still using G4 towers to do production. These systems go in production in businesses for decades.
It's a good machine. I'm just saying, it's exactly what I'm talking about. Silver Tower. Sorry.
Yeah, the mirrored door for life.
You know what? We should all be like John Gruber, or I'm thinking of John Syracuse, and we should have our Mac Pro, and we should, like Frankenstein, bring that baby back to life all the time. just and that, honestly, I'm petting my Raytel right now because it's like the Mac Pro, just black and a little smaller.
Really. I have brothers in arms out there that are content creators that are freaking out right now because Verizon just bought Vessel, which is
going to be bad.
Yeah, which is a platform that allows content creators to pre-release without ads, and then the viewers pay like $10 a month, and they get to get the stuff a couple days early, no ads. Verizon just bought them, so they announced they're shutting it down, and they're freaking out. And myself, I'm like, I'm really happy and proud that JB as a business doesn't rely on any single income source to survive, and we don't have that issue. But we do. This is where JB remains vulnerable, is this particular spot. And I've been working to get away from this for so long, but the software is what's holding me back, and that's so frustrating. Because I feel like I am still beholden a little bit to this Macintosh platform until I can replace Final Cut completely and the associated apps like Motion, After Effects, and things like that, and which is extremely difficult to move away from. And until I can get there, I feel like I'm beholden to the Mac platform, and I am really losing faith. I have, as somebody, again, I got to just reiterate, from the 80s, there has been a Mac or an Apple machine in our house with a creative professional using it. I just didn't see this coming. I could have seen Vessel being shut down. I could see Amazon affiliates getting pulled. I saw that. I didn't see Apple completely abandoning the high-end creative professional. And I got to feel like there's got to be some relation to the high-end developer who needs a system that is, or she needs a responsive system that is performant.
I mean, the relation is the relation's there, but
I think I'm in a worse situation, but I think I'm
the GPU. Right. I mean, at the end of
today,
the day,
I'm the canary in the coal mine. I tell you, I'm in the coal mine right now, and I'm dying. Just saying.
No, I listen. I will admit. Can I confess, Father?
Go ahead. I'm listening, son.
I had some concerns when I ordered the lemur that the Mac event was going to happen, and I was going to be super disappointed. I'm feeling pretty damn good. I'm feeling all right. A little bit of Schadenfreude, let's just say. I'm feeling good.
Yeah, I bet, dude. Yeah, I think you called it. All right, Mr. Dominic, where can people follow you on the Twitters?
Follow me at Dumanuko. I'm going to have follow-up pieces on the lemur as the week progresses.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. I absolutely will be following. I'm at Chris LAS. That's probably the best way to contact me because I can actually manage that. Unlike everything else in my life. At Chris Elias if you want to contact me. At Jupiter Signal if you want to follow network events and news. Catch the show live over jblive.tv. And yes, you can get converted to your local time at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar, and you can email us, jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact, and you can get in our hoopla over at coderradio.reddit.com. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you right back here next week.